Kia ora, which means welcome here in New Zealand. Hey, I'm Chris from the All Creatures Podcast, and today I'm actually going to be telling you two stories. I'm really excited to be sharing my little adventure here in New Zealand. Right now, I am at one of my favorite places, Sanctuary Mountain, and I'm going to do my best to pronounce this Maori word. It is Mangatati, and that's where I'm at. So I'm actually in the Shire, if you know where Lord of the Rings is, and actually the hobbits live about 15 minutes that way. So it's going to be an exciting little tour, an exciting story, and the gist of the story is going to be taking things for granted. So let's go. Okay, so here I am at the entrance to the sanctuary, and just a brief history of what this place is. This is one of the most unique sanctuaries in all of New Zealand. Behind me, you can see is a predator-proof fence, and right here is the fence line, and here is unfenced habitat, and behind me is the fenced habitat, which is designed to protect New Zealand native wildlife. So one of the stories I really want to talk about is the sanctuary and what New Zealand is experiencing, because we're experiencing this around the world in conservation, and that is the introduction of invasive species. So as the Europeans settled New Zealand, they brought a lot of animals intentionally, and then some not so intentionally. And the only native land mammal to New Zealand are the bats, the short-tailed bats. That is it. So there are no native predators, rodents, things like that. So when the Europeans came, they brought in all these invasive species, which have decimated really native bird populations, amphibians, and reptiles, and insects. So this place is one of the few places in New Zealand where it actually has a predator-proof fence to protect its native species and its native gorgeous habitat. So we're going to take a tour inside, and my other story really begins when I was a graduate student at Texas A&M. And briefly, because it's a long story, to learn the techniques that we needed in reproductive physiology, because that's my scientific background, we need to practice on domestic animals. There is not a university that has an elephant herd or a rhino herd or even a zebra herd that you can go and practice and learn some of these reproductive techniques that we use to help these endangered species. So I went off to Texas A&M, and a lot of my training was in horses. So the way my story is, and I'm going to weave it in as I go through this sanctuary, is part of my graduate studies was to full out all of the farm's mares every year. That was my job as a graduate student. I was teaching a class of about 50 undergrads, and I would assign them horses and mentor them, teach them through the semester, and then help them deliver all of these horses. That was my job. And so again, remember, the gist of the story is taking things for granted. Well, in this situation, I took things for granted, and it almost cost us a horse, and it was a very scary, sad moment. So it was a bitter lesson that I learned, but we'll get back to that a little bit later. Okay, so we are now entering the sanctuary, and here is the little gate complex to ensure no predators are getting in, with, again, the fencing system, and then allowing people in to come in here to keep out rats, stoats, weasels, possums from Australia, other land mammals that don't belong here, that have been devastating to the New Zealand biome. I mean, it's just been devastating to birds like the kakapo, one of the most critically endangered parrot species in the world. And as you enter the sanctuary, they talk about all the predator control that they're doing, because every now and then a limb will come knock a fence down, and they got to make sure nothing got in here. But again, one of the most unique places on earth. I think it's actually the largest predator-free sanctuary in the world. So let's go, and I'm going to start talking about delivering horses. So in this class I taught, I was always on call, and one of the it's just one of the most amazing things in life when you see a horse born, an elephant born, some of these most critically endangered species. I've worked with the Somali wild ass. I mean, to see them born, those babies, when you realize there's only a few hundred of them left in the world, it's spectacular. You have to see it. If you love animals, try to get out there and see, you know, a horse born or even a calf born. It's amazing, just like this landscape. So being on call, most horses give birth at night, okay? So as a prey species, they have evolved, and we've only domesticated them for a few thousand years. So the millions of years of evolution, or the tens of thousands of years that have given us Equus caballus, the modern horse, they still want to give birth at night. And so out of the 36 horses I would foal out every year for the 4 years I was at Texas A&M, most of them all were at night. 70-80% of them were between probably midnight and 2 a.m., sometimes 3 or 4 a.m. So I would get a phone call, jump in my truck, and go. And I was at the farm usually within 15 minutes. And I'm going to talk to you in a little bit about why that's important, to get there as quickly as possible. So, okay, picking up the story, I actually had to stop because I need my hands to talk about this. So, unlike humans giving birth with hoof stock, you know, they want them out as quickly as possible. And one of the most amazing things about nature is these babies, they stand within 15-20 minutes. They nurse hopefully within the hour. They can run with the herd within 4 hours because, you know, they're giving birth at night. Those babies need to be going first thing in the morning and keep up so they don't get picked off, right? So getting to the barn was a goal. I had to get there quickly, make sure the baby was on the ground, everything progressed smoothly for the horse and the baby, and then we watch. So again, like with elephants giving birth, or rhinos, or, you know, any other types of animals, we generally stand back and we don't intervene until they need it. So in this particular story, where I took things for granted, it had been spring break, had 5 mares due that week. 3 had already given birth. And the week, everything went fine. Everything was smooth. By the time I got to the barn, the baby was on the ground. We'd wait until the baby nursed, did all the checks, and then we'd go home. Usually 4, 5, 6 in the morning sometimes. Well, the 4th one that week, I get there, and I was tired, so I got coffee, and I brought my dog, and my guard was down. It'd been everything had been going well, right? And so I got there at like the 22, 23 minute mark. And I get there, and all I see is 2 little hooves. And I didn't see a baby on the ground. And I started freaking out. And I was like, you know, not outwardly, because I don't want the students to freak out, but internally, I'm like, oh my God, why did you wait? You should have got here earlier. Again, I took it for granted. So I told the students, you know, I got the gloves, I got the lube. I went to go check position. Again, you want one hoof like this so their shoulders can get through the birth canal. And it was like this. So I think it was like shoulder lock mummy. So I get in there, in the mare vagina, there's not a lot of room, and you're trying to manipulate those shoulders. And I pull, and just anytime she contracted, you pull and you pull out and down, and nothing happened. So I tell the students, call the vet school, we're going. Vet school's 10 minutes across campus. You go get the truck, you go get the trailer, you know, call the barn manager, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I look and I say, okay, one more time. I grab a student. I said, when she contracts, we pull with everything we got. And so I put my foot on her rump. She contracted, and we yanked, boom! Out comes this monster foal, all legs, huge filly. Heart rate comes down, everything's fine, mare's fine, foal's fine. She just was very large. You can almost hear it. You didn't hear it, we're like, whoa, but the birth canal, her hips popping to get that baby through. So it taught me a bitter lesson of taking things for granted. Like we're taking nature for granted. So we're going to do some more walks as I kind of wrap this up. Hello. Hello, Mr. Fantail. Hello. You're so beautiful. Yes, I know. I know. You want to be in the video? I'm sure you have tons of stories to tell. You're saying, don't take this for granted. Don't take this for granted. Okay, so that concludes my story, and not taking things for granted like this. Here I am 16 meters up in the heart of the sanctuary here, Sanctuary Mountain in the North Island of New Zealand. So, you know, thank you for supporting the LA Zoo, everything they do, their global conservation efforts. And I really hoped you enjoyed this tour of beautiful New Zealand. Come visit. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. So cheers.